Hi everyone and welcome, this is the Apostate Prophet. I hope you're having a great week. A few weeks ago I talked about Islam and its fundamental hostility towards Jews that can be found directly in the Quran, the Hadith, and texts by early scholars. As promised, it was only the first part of a short series, and now I want to go with you into Islam's dark history with Jews. Beforehand, I want to make one thing clear, which is that arguments like Spain did this, Europeans did that, Catholics were worse, or look at Israel are not arguments. I'm not here to come and say that Islam was the only religion and the only religious group that was bad with Jews and other minorities. And deflecting by mentioning other things like the Holocaust is just as irrelevant and useless. To summarize the first video, we talked about Quran verses and Hadith that are very hostile towards Jews and other religious groups. The Quran contains 2 verses that condemn and insult them in order to fight them. Chapter 4 verse 160 claims that restrictions on Jews were a divine response to Jews being wrongdoers. Chapter 2 verse 88 explains that Allah cursed Jews and Christians. And there were many other examples, saying that Allah turned many Jews into pigs and monkeys, which many Muslims today still use to insult Jews, and that Jews are even worse than Christians, that the majority of Christians and Jews are perverted transgressors, and from there we went into Hadith, like Muhammad's prophecy, that Jews will be fought by Muslims, and that even stones and trees will call for the Muslims to kill the Jews. And we also went into that Muhammad expelled and massacred targeted Jewish tribes in and around the city of Medina. When Muhammad died, 4 caliphs were appointed after him, one after the other: Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. The caliphs didn't have very much history because all 4 periods were full of rebellions, apostasy, and heresy. Abu Bakr died in only 2 years. Umar was assassinated by a Persian slave. Uthman was assassinated by Egyptian rebels, and Ali was, well, assassinated by Muslim separatists. As you can see, the Muslim rulers after Muhammad weren't liked very much, especially due to Muslim separatism, but also because of their brutal expansions and implementations of the Sharia. Regarding Jews, the biggest action was taken by 2nd Caliph Umar, who fulfilled Muhammad's promise to expel all Jews and Christians from Arabia. He expelled them all to the north and issued a ban on non-Muslims residing in the Hijaz region. But something much more important about Umar is the Pact of Umar, a document that heavily restricts Christians and Jews. Historians are not entirely sure if this document really belonged to Umar or to someone else who came after him. But that is less relevant, because the importance of this document is based on how it forms the basis of treatments with Jewish and Christian minorities in the Islamic world. And it was strictly followed in the Islamic world, except under Shia caliphates and until the Ottoman Empire made its own laws. If you read some points of the document, you will see very quickly that Islamic rule over Christians and Jews was not tolerant at all, despite what Muslims and apologists claim. Here are some points from the document. The homes of non-Muslims must be lower than those of Muslims, otherwise they could be considered equal. Crosses in churches, Jewish symbols, and other non-Muslim symbols are forbidden in their temples. Building new churches, synagogues, and any other form of non-Islamic temples is forbidden. Rebuilding such places is forbidden. Jews and Christians are forbidden from raising their voices during prayer and carrying any religious symbols in public. Palm Sunday, Easter, and similar religious celebrations are forbidden. All non-Muslims have to show respect to Muslims and give them their spots if the Muslims want to sit. Christians are forced to wear blue belts and turbans, Jews yellow, Zoroastrians black, Samaritans red, and so on. This way they can be identified and treated accordingly. All non-Muslims are forced to give up weapons. All non-Muslims are forbidden from employing, leading, or being in any way superior to a Muslim. Any non-Muslim that fights with a Muslim loses his state protection and can be punished by the people. All religious places of non-Muslims must be lower than the lowest mosque around, and so on. You know what this reminds me of? of the timeline of Nazi anti-Semitism. The difference is that Islam is atrocious against all other religious groups, not only against the Jews. But in history, Islam showed significantly more oppressive behavior towards Jews than against any other religious group. Jane Garber, professor at City University of New York, described it as continuous anti-Semitism that began with early Islamic history because of Muhammad's mistreatment of Jews. She says Jews were always seen as worthless, deceitful, hostile, but also ridiculous, cowardly, and weak by Islamic nations. There are so many examples of Jew hatred in the Islamic history, but I will try to make it as brief and comprehensive as possible. In the 7th century, Islam was quite new, but Muhammad's atrocities, together with Jews being expelled from Arabia and taxed in newly conquered areas, marked a beginning. The 8th century was marked with the Umayyads banning all Jews from worshipping at the Temple Mount. But more importantly, in Morocco, under Idris I, the founder of Morocco, Jews were forced to provide the ruler's harem with annual virgins among their own girls and women, otherwise the emir would attack and expel them. In the 9th century, the dress code and the first yellow badge for Jews and other minorities was imposed. Reminds you of this, huh? If you look for the origins of this Jewish star that the Nazis enforced, you have to thank Islam and the Honorable Abbasid Caliphate for that. Other atrocities, such as the annihilation of Jewish cemeteries, continued. In the 10th century, there were at least 3 massive incidents and genocides, most notably under the Andalusian leader Almanzor, who massacred Jews and captured their belongings. Andalusia refers to Spain under Islam and is claimed to be very tolerant by Muslim apologists. It was more tolerant than other Muslim kingdoms, but tolerant? No. One of the most notable Islamic atrocities on Jews was the Granada massacre in 1066, when there was a time of tolerance in Andalusia and a Jewish scholar became an advisor in the Muslim-ruled Andalusia. The Muslim people didn't like the fact that another Jew was considered equal to Muslims and had authority. A huge mob of Muslims stormed the palace in Granada, crucified Joseph ibn Agrela, the Jewish vizier, and massacred the Jewish population of the city. Reports find that 4,000 people died in one day. Only 25 years later, the Almoravids, who took control of the city, made another massacre. Again in the 11th century, another weird thing happened in the Fatimid caliphate, which was a Shia caliphate. With direct authority from the caliphate, synagogues, holy artifacts and scriptures were destroyed, and even worse dress codes for Jews and Christians were ordered, so that Jews had to wear golden calves and Christians had to wear heavy crosses around their necks, while also wearing noticeable black turbans. When bathing, Jews and Christians had to wear bells instead, so that everyone could notice that a filthy Jew or Christian was coming. The Fatimid Caliphate, despite being so hostile to Jews, was also accused by the Sunni Abbasid Caliphate to be descendants of Jews. That's a regular insult that has been around there for 1,000 years, and it's still being used today. Gaining more power in the 12th century, more atrocities occurred, such as Jews being exiled, converted, or killed in Morocco. They were forbidden from residing in Marrakesh and given the death penalty for existing. One notable incident in this century was the massacre of over 100,000 Jews in Morocco. Other massacres happened in Spain by Muslims. And one of those fleeing from the latter was poet Judah Halevi, who only after the massacre wrote significant poems about Jewish suffering and the return to the Holy Land. Another killing of a Jewish advisor, followed by a massacre, happened in the 13th century in Persia, where the Mongol ruler appointed a Jewish advisor, which was unacceptable for Muslims. Christians, Buddhists, and others were somewhat tolerable, but a Jew? No. Off with his head. The 14th century was a mess due to the Black Death and related superstitions, and in this century there were multiple mass conversations and massacres in Egypt, Syria, Baghdad, and other lands. In the 15th century, again a killing of an advisor, followed by a massacre of Jews, occurred in Morocco. In Egypt, Jews were forced to pay a huge amount of gold and were impoverished. Massacres in Egypt were renewed in the 16th century. Many chose to flee to other lands Jews and remaining Jews informed each other to keep a low profile in Muslim communities. That didn't make the situation much better, but that way they tried to prevent being accused of complete nonsense and attacked by the Muslims. In the 7th century, Persia peaked in the persecution of Jews. The Safavid monarchy spread propaganda in its lands that Jews were filthy and brought curses and shame on the Muslims. Consequently, Jews under Safavid rule were forcibly converted, massacred, and exiled. Other massacres and expulsions, especially in North Africa, continued. In Algeria, a plague was blamed on Jews in the 18th century, followed by an exodus and the destruction of synagogues and anything Jewish. And in North Africa, Jews were again massacred, exiled, and plundered by mobs and rulers. Most notably in Morocco, where in more than 3 different incidents, Jews were almost completely eradicated. The 19th century was marked by at least 15 massacres, expulsions, mass conversions, and robberies against Jews in the Islamic world, mainly in Algeria, Persia, Syria, Morocco, Tunisia, Baghdad, and other regions under the Persians, the Ottomans, and other rulers. We have fairly more records from the 20th century, and we can trace back over 20 pogroms against Jews in the Islamic world, like the Thrace pogroms in Turkey, the Constantine pogrom in Algeria, the Farhud pogrom in Iraq, the riots of Tripolitania, the Cairo bombings, and many others. Another important thing is the Jewish exodus in the 20th century, where most of the Jews in North Africa and the Middle East were exiled, while many chose to flee as a consequence, and Muslim lands, especially Arab lands, decreased their Jewish populations from almost 1 million to only 8,000 in the Middle East and North Africa. And here we arrive in today's time. As you may have noticed, I left out incidents related to the Palestine-Israel conflict. I did that for 2 reasons. The first reason is to prove that mass atrocities by Muslims against Jews have little to do with Israel. Anti-Semitic atrocities didn't peak in the last century. There were so many more in Islamic history, and they have been there all along. Jews never had unity, they were a diaspora, and followers of the so tolerant and protective religion of Islam always used that weakness of Jews, together with Muhammad's and the Quran's Jew hatred, to oppress them, to push them around, to kill them, to rob them when needed, and it never stopped until Jews left the Islamic world. The excuse that people are anti-Semitic because of Israel is not only ridiculous and hypocritical, it's also simply wrong. The second reason is that I will discuss Israel and my take on Israel in a 3rd video that will be the 3rd part of this series. There I will give you my take of the whole Israel issue. I won't look at emotions and group thinking, but only on history and reason. As mentioned, Jews were not only oppressed in the Islamic world. As a history geek, I would be very biased and stupid to claim that. But the point is not who was worse with Jews. The point is that Islam was never merciful, tolerant, and friendly with Jews. I didn't even go into half of the attacks on Jews in Islamic history. This was probably less than 10%. Islamic history is full of this, and it is not only to blame on the dividedness and weakness of the Jews, but mostly on Islam, the Quran, the Sunnah, and therefore the Sharia. No matter what you think about Israel, the existence of that state put an end to all of this. I don't think it would ever end. Even now, when most Muslims have never met, never seen a Jew, the Islamic world is by far the most anti-Semitic in the world. If you are an ex-Muslim, you don't even need those studies to know how Jew-hating the Islamic world is. You can hear it in mosques, in the streets, in the media, at school, on social media, and everywhere. Thank you so much. Part 3 will be out very soon. If you want to support my cause, since my videos can't be monetized, you can do so on Patreon through the link in the description. I appreciate every support very, very much. Thanks again for watching. Have a great weekend and stay away from Islam.